comparing vaccinated versus unvaccinated children. As the trailer you just watched noted, Del Bigtree, ICANN CEO, had met Dr. Marcus Service at one point, who was the head of infectious disease at Henry Ford Medical Center. And he agreed to meet and to potentially do the study. He is conducts clinical trials for vaccines, including for the Moderna COVID-19 vaccine. He's avowedly pro-vaccine. And when we met him, we argued that this was an opportunity to shut the anti-vaxxers up about their claim that unvaccinated children are healthier. To our surprise, Dr. Zerva said he would conduct the study. He recruited a chief epidemiologist and 2 statisticians within Henry Ford to do so. These were mainstream scientists who no doubt held orthodox views regarding vaccines. In early 2020, I received a copy of the study. It showed the results of the analysis comparing children enrolled in Henry Ford from 2000 to 2016 from birth onward who had no vaccines compared to those who had 1 or more vaccines. The study was based on actual medical records, meaning finally a large vaccinated versus unvaccinated study using health data from a major United States health institution, something, as the IOM pointed out, never existed before. The study began by explaining it set out to reduce vaccine hesitancy by assuring parents the CDC vaccine schedule is safe. Instead, what these researchers found was that vaccinated children had 4.29 times the rate of asthma, 3.03 times the rate of atopic disease, 5.96 times the rate of autoimmune disease, and 5.53 times the rate of neurodevelopmental disorders, which included 3.28 times the rate of developmental delay and 4.47 times the rate of speech disorder. All of these findings were statistically significant. There was also other conditions for which there were numerous cases in the vaccinated group, but 0 in the unvaccinated group. Hence, a rate cannot be calculated, including brain dysfunction, ADHD, learning disabilities, intellectual disabilities, and tics. For example, there were 262 cases of ADHD in the vaccinated group, and there were none in the unvaccinated group. In this study, there were around 16,000 kids in the vaccinated group, by the way, and around 2,000 in the unvaccinated group. So the rate, of course, between those is important, and that's what the study compared. These findings were troubling, including because these chronic health issues can be caused by immune system dysregulation, and vaccines can cause immune system dysregulation. Citations for this are in my written submission. Overall, the study found that after 10 years, 17% of the unvaccinated children had a chronic health issue, while 57% of the vaccinated children had at least one chronic health issue, often multiple. That's 17 versus 57%. The only real problem with this study and why it didn't get submitted for publication is that its findings did not fit the belief and the policy that vaccines are safe. Had it found vaccinated children were healthier, it no doubt would have been published immediately.
Yep, but they didn't publish it. 57% of the people getting the jabs, getting vaccines, are got all kinds of problems. Can't release that to the public. Oh, no. You know, it's interesting because Aron Siri is passionate when it comes to the way the unvaccinated are treated. And he had this conversation with Senator Johnson. Listen to this.
Very quick. Can I respond to the point of civility? There is nobody out there that you can talk about the way that the media and the medical profession talks about people that don't vaccinate. Throw them out of school, kick them out of their jobs. The way that those folks are treated, they're not to be lectured by anybody about civility.
Remember this
that is the height of absurdity. Absurdity. I mean, truly absurdity.
So next,
it's an insult on top of injury. That's what it is.
So I actually have one extra, and this is a genuine question, because it always popped up during COVID, and I have to ask the same vaccines. I asked it repeatedly during COVID. If these things are so effective, why do you care whether somebody else gets vaccinated? I mean, I think that applies to I realize there are some children immunocompromised can't get vaccinated. I got that, but
well,
still.
Senator, you know our firm has the largest practice in the country that represents children that need medical exemption. I will tell you, we don't have a single client who is immunostate. Their neutrophil levels are such that they're only susceptible to disease that could really injure them for the few that we vaccinated, but not the other 1,400 known pathogens. It doesn't exist. It's a myth. It's a myth, basically. But it's a way to bludgeon, again, the kids whose parents typically don't need these vaccines. Can I just say one thing about the autism bit, just because it's been bandied about? we sued the CDC for the studies that support that the vaccines given in the first month of life do not cause autism. We sued them because they wouldn't give it to us. We said, give us the studies that show the meningococcal vaccine, the polio vaccine, the Hep B vaccine, the Hib vaccine, and the Hep B vaccine. Those 5 vaccines don't cause autism. You know what they provided? None. We sued them in federal court. They ended up in stipulated order. They gave us 20 studies. Not one of them has to do with those vaccines. They're all MMR or they're all thimerosal. This notion that there's a mountain of studies out there that show vaccines of autism is ridiculous. And I've heard the measles death in Texas bandied about. We represent one of those families. We've seen the medical records. One of those kids, I can tell you for certain, did not die from measles. He died from hospital malfeasance. That's what he died from. He wasn't even having measles when he died, and we'll be putting out a report on that. And somebody else has reviewed the medical records of a second kid. I agree we shouldn't engage in fear-mongering. And if we were talking about the overview of the scientific literature, instead of randomly looking at studies, maybe start with the Institute of Medicine reviews of the entire body of literature from 1991, 94, 2012, the HRQ reports, and you could see how vacuous vaccine safety science is. I'll leave with one last point. Look, if vaccines are so safe, why are they the only consumer product where you cannot sue the manufacturer for injuries to claim it was made safer? It's been 1980, it's been over 30 years they're telling you Hep B safe, Hib safe, these are safe. You still need immunity? Okay, let me tell you my definition of vaccine, Senator. It's a product that causes so much injury that it has to have liability for the injuries that it's causing, immunity for the injuries that it's causing. That's what a vaccine is.
Okay.
Boom. Passion. He's been heavily involved in this and he's had enough. I love to see that passion. He wasn't the only one. There was a Toby Rogers, PhD. He's called for, why are you guys covering up that vaccines cause autism? We've known it.
Words in my mouth, respectfully, Senator.
I'm asking the question.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So look, let's put it in the context of COVID. I've already talked about autism. Let's talk about COVID. The state, however you define that, the military, CDC, Tony Fauci, Ralph Barrick at the University of North Carolina, created a weaponized virus, correct? Gain-of-function research. They contracted it out to China, and it caused a pandemic around the world once it was released. The government created a weaponized virus that then got out and caused a global pandemic. When are we going to have accountability for that? I generally don't understand why government officials are allowed to engage in
Rogers, I'm not putting
research.
words in your mouth. I'm just quoting your words.
I would like to
And
have
I think
accountability for the COVID era, and I'd like to have accountability for the fact that the CDC has known since 1999 that vaccines cause autism, and they've covered it up for 26 years. How do we begin to have accountability? You want to call it something different? Truth commissions, criminal trials?
So
I would welcome
you're
that.
comparing